this is the oddly specific book recommendations live speaking. What book can I recommend for you today? I definitely have the right book for you. I know something just like that. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel, and like you saw in the intro, today I'm going to be doing another oddly specific book recommendations video. You guys sent in some oddly specific book recommendations requests and I will be recommending you books based off of those. I've made 2 of these videos in the past, so if you'd like to check out those as well, you can definitely do so. I will put a link up here somewhere. And now, without any further ado, let's get into the requests because I've gotten quite a lot. Okay, so I've gotten a few like these, so I think I'm just going to lump them together. A book that will make me feel like I'm in love, have butterflies in my stomach. I realize why you want to feel that way. And then also a romance-induced butterflies. Very similar request. A book where the male love interest is not intimidated by the strong female character. Now, I'm reading this book currently and it is absolutely perfect for this recommendation. And that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I'm so excited that this book is finally out in the world. It's one of my favourite romances ever and I haven't even finished it, but I think I can already say that because I just like it so much. This is about Nora, who's a literary agent, so she basically helps authors, and then we have Charlie Lastra, or Lastra, I don't know how you say it, and he's an editor, so he edits authors' books. And they've been like sort of work enemies, like nemesis sort of. They don't work for the same company when the book starts, but they have a horrible business meeting. And then a few years later down the line, they meet when she's vacationing in a small town that he's actually from. It's very similar to Beach Read. It's like a similar story, but a different font. Again, it's perfect for people who love books, who love to read, who are absolute bookworms. And it's also very snarky. Nora is a very sort of analytic, planning character, very straightforward. She has been called cold-hearted throughout this book, but she's definitely not. And Charlie's also very snarky like that, and it's been so wonderful so far, and it's definitely giving me all the butterflies. I immediately want to get back into dating. I'm like all over the place with this, so yeah, it's definitely a good time. This is a request I also saw a few times. With amazing European summer vibe, something like Call Me By Your Name, and I think Mr. Wilder and Me would be really good for this. I haven't finished this book either. I promise I will recommend books I've actually finished front to back, but I thought this one was just too good to pass up, really. So this is about the summer of 1976. Always a great start. And it's basically about a young woman called Callista, and it's sort of her coming of age story as she travels from Greece to the United States and then back to Greece with a film director to make a movie. Like, I haven't really read this fully, so I can't really say whether it will be good, really, so I don't know if I can recommend it to you, but I picked it up myself because I felt like this would bring the European summer vibes, so that's why I got it. I think most of the book is set in Greece, and I also love books that sort of surround movies and like Hollywood vibes as well, even though this is not set in Hollywood as far as I know. The next request I saw on this list is Naked Witches Dancing Around a Fire in a Forest. Listen, I have the perfect recommendation for this. So I have 2 actually. I think if you're looking for a graphic novel, I think Nightmare in Savannah would be really, really good for this, because in this one there's literally a scene of them dancing around a fire in the forest. This is about evil fairies though, but it's definitely those vibes. Won't say a lot more about the plot because it's a graphic novel, so I don't want to spoil it for you, but a girl moves to a new town, she discovers she might be a fairy, and then she joins a band of evil fairies in a coven, basically, sort of. So yeah, definitely one I recommend. And then also The Witch Haven is perfect for this. There are scenes where they sneak out to the woods to do secret magic. It's about all these girls in a magic boarding school. It's also historical. It's about a girl trying to discover what happened to her brother. So there's a little bit of mystery in there as well. And yeah, like I said, scenes in the forest at night trying to learn forbidden magic, maybe some forbidden romance in there as well. So definitely witches dancing around a forest in the fire. Wait, no. So definitely witches dancing around a fire in the forest and drinking some wine. A book that will rip my heart apart, but then also put it back together. I also have a good recommendation for this one. I would say Know My Name by Chanel Miller is perfect because this book absolutely broke me in so many ways. And I think I've cried over like 6 times when I was reading this, just because it was so sad and so poignant. And I don't know if I pronounced that right. It was just so good and it felt so raw and real. And it was just it was horrible, but it was so good, and it was also so poetically written, and it definitely gave me hope towards the end. So this is the real story, the memoir of Chanel Miller. She was part of the big Stanford scandal where she was raped at a party behind some dumpsters, and it's absolutely horrendous. But the way she talks about this experience and how women are treated in the media after they've survived something like this, and the way the man that did this horrible thing to her was treated, and just the way she writes about it all, so beautiful and so heartbreaking, and it just really hit something in me. And I think, honestly, this should be a required reading. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and it is so good. It's just a beautiful book, and it broke me. But it also healed me, sort of, towards the end especially, where she talks about how she overcame this and who she is as a person and what's important to her. And it's so beautiful. It's not just about what she went through, it's also about family and love and passion and art, and it's so good. Books about unhinged hot women. Thank you. I have the perfect book again. I would like to recommend Woman Eating by Claire Coder. This is one of those typical that girl sad books with an unhinged female main character, but then there's sort of a twist because the main character is also a vampire. Her name's Lydia. She's definitely a bit unhinged, quite a lot unhinged actually, and her mother is sort of not doing well. Her mother is also a vampire. So Lydia moves out and her mother is put into a caring home. Lydia has a very complicated relationship with her mother, so she doesn't really want to think about her mother, let alone spend any time with her mother. So she moves out into an art studio, and there she meets a guy and sort of falls for him. She's also doing an art apprenticeship, but throughout this all, she's definitely sort of starving because she can't eat, because she needs to drink blood, but her mother always took care of that, and she's also sort of not taking care of herself, and it's just, she's slowly deteriorating and everything just keeps getting worse. Yeah, I really want to spoil something right now because at the end it gets truly super unhinged, and I just don't know how to, I don't want to spoil it, but I kind of really do. Anyway, it gets really unhinged, and she was such a fun character to read about, and this whole book was just so weird but so funny as well because it was just so absurd. I would definitely recommend it for this request. Recommend me a book for an aspiring writer who wishes to live in Paris. That is a wonderful request. And I also saw a similar one, A Queer Parisian Summer. Also a wonderful request. And a book for writers and dreamers. Okay, so for all of these, I have several recommendations. So of course, I'll never shut up about Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke, because this is one of my favorite tiny classics, and it is really, really good. This is basically a collection of letters that Rainer Maria Rilke wrote to one of his aspiring author friends, and it is just full of wisdom for creative people, artists, authors. It's really beautiful, it's overly dramatic, it's wonderfully written, the prose is just so good. Would highly recommend, and Paris is mentioned in it a few times. Another one that will be great for this, especially if we're talking about queer Parisian summer, is Only Dull People Are Brilliant at Breakfast, which is basically a quote collection from Oscar Wilde, from some of his letters, some of his essays. It's very funny, it's lighthearted, it's a good time, and it's a bit absurd, you know. It's Oscar Wilde, it's really good. And then also, I would like to recommend some poetry by Billy Collins. Whale Day has a beautiful poem about Paris. I think it's called Paris in May, and it's absolutely beautiful. This is also a very fun book, and it's beautiful. And then also The Apple That Astonished Paris by Billy Collins as well, one of his first poetry collections. The cover alone is stunning, and this whole book is just really fun. There's some beautiful poems in there about writing, reading, but most of it is just beautiful prose, and I would highly recommend it. A book about food that talks a lot about good food. Okay. I Feel Bad About My Neck by Nora Ephron is one of the last books I've read, actually, and this one talks a lot about food and cooking and making food and discovering new cookbook authors and stuff like that. It's a little bit of a silly book, it's a little bit sort of shallow at certain points, but it's definitely very fun to read. And if you're looking for something lighthearted, that's quick to read, that talks about food and good food a lot, then I would highly recommend this one. Recommend me a book with disability representation. Okay, I recently read a wonderful book about being disabled. Let me look it up again. It was called Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebecca Tausig. One of the best books I've read so far this year. This was incredibly insightful. It's basically an essay collection, sort of memoir of Rebecca's life growing up and being disabled and being in a wheelchair, and it was so eye-opening. It was wonderfully written. Honestly, it just grabbed me and it wouldn't let me go. I would highly recommend it to anybody who calls themselves a feminist, who'd like to learn more about being disabled, about sort of the barriers that the world puts up and the way the world is not built for disabled people. It was really, really good and really interestingly written, and I think Rebecca Tausig is a wonderful person. Her Instagram is also really cool to check out. She also writes beautiful captions on there. Definitely highly recommend it from me. I think I gave it 5 stars actually. Okay, and I think this is the last request I'm going to be doing today, but I'll definitely make one in the future. So if you have any specific book recommendations you want to get from me, leave them in the comments down below. This person said, a book that will fill the void in me with some happiness. Well, this is a book I read recently as well, so in my wrap up I'm going to be mentioning a lot of these books in more depth as well. It's Find the Good, Unexpected Life Lessons from a Small Town Obituary Writer by Heather Lender. This was so fun. It's a very short read and it's basically about Heather Lender's experience in writing other people's obituaries. So it's about death and life, and it's sort of heart-wrenching, but it's also really heartwarming. It's difficult to explain, but she talks to families and writes down the most important things of people's lives. It's a very inspiring read, and it really reminds you to live in the now and to be present. And I really loved it, and I think it will definitely fill the void in your heart and then maybe also break it just a little bit. So those were all of the tips I could give you today on this oddly specific book recs tip line video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Definitely let me know if you have any other recommendation requests of books you want me to recommend. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again and have a wonderful day. Bye!